grow your B2B business. My name is Eric Cross, and I have been working for Alibaba.com for the past 9 years, holding lots of different roles. Presently, I'm the head of sales and customer operations for North America. I'm joined today by Kareem Khoury, CEO and owner of the Atlas Network, as well as Daniel Rosenfield, CEO and owner of Totally Products. These two gentlemen are suppliers on Alibaba.com who I think are going to have a lot of interesting insights for you today. So please feel very free to ask some questions when we get to the Q&A bit. So today we're going to start by talking about just some of the reasons why companies are exploring e-commerce marketplaces to grow their sales. And I will just frame that with the omni-channel angle is becoming a very hot topic today. Most companies that are expanding onto marketplaces are actually doing a variety of offline and online and also multiple channels. Then we're going to get to some Q&A. We're going to learn a little bit from Dan and Kareem. And finally, you'll get some insider tips from the three of us before we open it up for some questions. So, why should you be selling on an e-commerce marketplace? I'd say raise your hand if you are selling on any e-commerce marketplace. Great, so roughly half of you, that's excellent progress. It's also roughly on track with the landscape in North America. About 60% of businesses have something like their own website, which is a little bit behind the curve globally. And so the obvious next step is to join a marketplace. 25 years ago, when Alibaba started recruiting manufacturers out in Asia, the very vast majority of them did not even have an own company website, and their first digital presence was their storefront on our platform. Of course, the reasons to sell on an e-commerce marketplace are pretty clear. You have a massive audience. You often have infrastructure within the ecosystem that will help you leverage those tools to reach the audience and earn those sales. And finally, you have typically some form of verification and quality assurance that is provided by the platform that also gives the buyer base an added sense of confidence. So the majority of e-commerce marketplaces will offer things like payment and transaction service, logistics support, and they will also help in terms of advertising, so you can quickly scale up your audience in a short time. But of course, there's a lot of options. So which one or which ones should you be playing in? Now, personally, I would say it depends entirely on your capabilities and what you're trying to accomplish. If you're looking for a channel to just do a little bit of brand building or some marketing, there's a lot of great options out there. If you're looking for a channel to find new segments to sell into, or even new markets to enter, there's really just a couple that you would want to explore. So on B2B marketplaces, and I know many come to mind besides Alibaba.com, I'll let you connect that yourself, but you will typically have a larger representation of source supply. So I'm talking about raw materials suppliers, manufacturers, OEMs, white label suppliers. But you'll also see a larger representation of large distributors, wholesalers, and retailers even. Whereas on a D2C marketplace, if you just picture your own supply chain or your own value chain, the last couple steps there are B to B to C. So if that's where you are making your margins, then you really have a lot of options, both in B2B platforms as well as B2C platforms to generate sales. Other things to consider. Now, every marketplace has their own rules and checks and controls, and as well as penalties for breaking those rules. So you want to see what is the mix. How are suppliers meant to be operating on this platform, right? So if you take your generic D2C platform, typically that platform is your distributor who is fulfilling product to their customers. Fantastic, right? It's a very low involvement way to generate some business. But if you're selling, say, granite slabs for construction, Well, now you're quite limited what kind of marketplaces you can explore, because most of them aren't actually warehousing tungsten granite. So you also want to consider the balance of the customer acquisition cost. And what I mean by that is, if you're doing very low volumes, a membership, flat membership fee model is actually going to be relatively expensive. If you're doing high models, then that customer acquisition cost starts to come down dramatically. If you're in the small to medium-sized space, there's lots of very good D2C options for you. If you're looking to expand into a B2B space and you know that you have capabilities that are earning you margins today, then there's a couple of channels that I actually recommend you explore. Alibaba.com being one of them. So Alibaba.com, I'm just going to go through a couple of the basics here. Of course, if you have more detailed questions, I very much encourage you to ask. The upshot is that we've developed from a directory of OEM manufacturers into a full e-commerce marketplace. We've got transaction support, logistics support, and we've now got supply from all around the world. So if there's any message you're going to take away from this sharing today, is that Alibaba.com is open for US businesses to join and sell their products globally. Just a little bit about our buyers. Now, I'm sure many of you are our buyers, right? You source product on Alibaba, you browse product on Alibaba, and so on. And that makes a lot of sense. The United States is actually our largest buyer base. It represents about 12.5 million active buyers and upward 30 million total buyers. And now we distinguish the two simply. Oh, you guys want to separate it a little bit? Thank you. Yes. That's why these are always better when they're interactive. Great, so as you see, the United States is the largest buyer base. And then you're going to notice a trend. There's a lot of common law jurisdictions sourcing on Alibaba.com, right? There's historical reasons for that. And you can see that we also have some emerging economies taking top slots. Mexico is almost certainly going to be in the top 3 next time I'm up here telling everybody about Alibaba.com. Alibaba is also a hybrid marketplace. It means that we don't actually pigeonhole you into an operating model, right? So we don't say you need to send your product to a warehouse, and then when you have an order, you use this transaction system and this logistics solution. No, it's actually a choose your own adventure. You could say, we're okay. We've got our trucks, we've got our warehousing. We don't actually even need a transaction solution. So you're very free to do your business the way you do it today profitably, right? We don't put downward pressure on your pricing. We don't tell you to drop your MOQs. You could list your product at 140-foot container MOQ, or you won't even talk about the opportunity. That's fine. No skin off our backs. We don't charge a commission also. So now we're going to have a little chat with Dan from Totally Products, who's a 10-year supplier on Alibaba.com. He's a manufacturer of white label supplements and nutraceuticals based in Florida, so we're very happy that he came all the way up here to talk to us today. So thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Hello.
Oh, good. So just to get things started, I want to ask Dan, what initially, so I can see you've been on the platform for over a decade. So yes. A decade ago, what initially piqued your interest in joining Alibaba.com?
It's like anything, I was, at the time, most of my business was just domestic, right? So I felt like I was hitting a ceiling. I felt like, I needed to find a way to explore an international presence, right? So here then comes my, love relationship with Alibaba, who in the beginning, and I keep, I find it funny because in the beginning I wanted nothing to do with them. They found me and I was like, leave me alone. I don't know who you are. I don't want to sell to, China, or I don't want to buy from China. That was like my first, a thought process. And, then I started thinking, I said, wow, this is an interesting platform that possibly could expand my product line, right? So, with that said, I reluctantly in the beginning jumped on board, and wow, it's just been an amazing ride, because once I was on board and once I kind of was persistent and set everything up, it was just an amazing business model, right? I mean, I'm like, wow, now I'm going from reaching, millions of customers to tens of millions of customers. And remember, all you need is a very small percentage of clients, right? You don't need everybody, you just need 0.0001% of that clientele. And it's just amazing that, jumping on board with and really the largest international presence. Alibaba is the largest platform internationally, right? There are others out there. There's TradeKey and there's a few other platforms out there. But Alibaba, it's kind of like the sun, right? And everybody else is just like a small planet. And there's just so much traffic to, that just like, it's just overwhelming, and it's been an amazing experience really building my platform with them in the 10 years, and probably one of the best decisions in my business career for sure.
Thanks for that. And do you have any tips for Alibaba.com's newest merchant who might be in the room with us today?
Well, one thing I can tell you, can't think of it like Amazon or eBay. You can't. It's not a set it and forget it listing service. You can't say, okay, I'm going to put a product on, and you know what, I'm just going to set it, forget it, I'll get some orders. That's what most of the people do. So most of the people give up, right? I'm telling you, it's nothing like that. You have to be, it's kind of like layers. It's like, I think of it like, I love to use, the example of, it's like planting flowers, right? You got to build your listings. You got to build it with high quality videos and images and high-res images, and you have to create like a beautiful mini site. And once you do these little things, once you build that foundation, it's just the traffic's going to start flowing. And that's one thing I learned. I was persistent in the beginning because it's easy to give up with this thing because there's just a lot of times you have to weed through, some of the poor, responses. People are hitting you up with stupid questions, and it takes time to get inquiries, right? It took time. It took me months. I didn't get the inquiries overnight. It took me 3 to 6 months to start getting quality inquiries. And that took time because I developed high quality listings. I created a beautiful mini site. So, my advice is you have to really take pride in this because this mini site and the image of your Alibaba store is a representation of you, of your business. And it really, you have to think of Alibaba as like a natural, organic SEO platform, kind of like, a Google or Amazon, where your store is picked up. It's not just good on Alibaba. Having the store is picked up outside of Alibaba. People start to see this website across all platforms. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten business outside of Alibaba because I have such a great setup, because they see all my listings organically and they see my beautiful site, my mini site. So I'm just saying that's very, very important. That's probably one of the biggest advice I can give you is develop quality listings, build a beautiful page, do what you need to do, put in the time in the beginning, and it will flourish.
Great. And you had a question for Dan? Please. Yeah, please.
So your model for supplements, you're a white labeler for other brands, or are you just creating branded products that you're promoting?
Very good question. So my model changed over the last 10 years. Initially, when I was on the Alibaba store, I wanted to set it up as a wholesale business. I said, you know what, I'm going to have my products. I'm hoping somebody, buys 200 to 500 to 1,000 units, and I'm going to be. Then I changed that model, and I said, you know what, because I am a manufacturer and a distributor, I said, you know what, I'm going to start that, because I started getting inquiries about 8, 9 years ago, hey, I want a white label. I want to take your product, I want to put my brand on it. That changed, so that model morphed over time, and that's now my main model now, because originally it was, I still get occasionally a wholesale order where they're like, okay, we just want to buy a bunch of your products with your label. But 90% of my clients want white label. They want the ability, they want their own brand. And so it has morphed. So in answering your question, yes, that's how my business model is now. It's a white private label type of business where they buy my product line with their label design, and then I have my home team create a label and a full design package for them, and that's it.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, and we'll open the floor to lots of more questions, so should you have them, brilliant. I also want to share how you can get in touch with Dan. You can find him on Alibaba, you can find him on his own website, LinkedIn being my personal favorite place to make new connections. All right, thank you, Dan, again. And Mr. Kareem, welcome.
Thank you.
So, Kareem is the founder and owner of the Atlas Network, which is a 2-year supplier on Alibaba.com. In fact, Kareem was our very first United States-based verified supplier, which is our flagship membership on the platform. He's a custom manufacturer of glass packaging, plastic packaging, custom luxury products, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I'd encourage you to check out his storefront and just see how broad his scope is. So, Kareem, I'll ask you the same questions actually as Dan. So, what initially piqued your interest in joining Alibaba as a merchant?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. We are a 20-plus year global supply chain solutions provider. We work with close to 2,000 suppliers globally, have clients from around the world, and have always been working in one capacity or another with Alibaba, from the very, very beginnings all the way back. Because it's the largest global trading platform in the world. It gives you access to really suppliers from around the world, buyers from around the world, and it's been just a very strong and efficient experience. So when Alibaba had come and had started discussing that they were creating US-based buyer and supplier networks, we jumped on that immediately because it gives access in a way that's unprecedented in global trade. And for this, if you are not really involved in this kind of a widespread mechanism, you're really, at a little bit of a disadvantage in many ways. For us, we always look to protect our clients. So programs such as the trade assurance, such as their verification programs and so on, these are the kinds of things that give us levels of comfort and safety when we're providing solutions for our small to mid-sized businesses. And Alibaba's worked very, very hard to do these things and create these kinds of mechanisms through time that really are making the buying and selling transactional process efficient and effective. So, for all of those reasons, it's been a great experience. We have our mini site, as Dan said, which is representing our products that we produce. It's representing our services that we offer to our customers. And the engagement is unbelievable. I mean, the level of requests that we get on a daily basis is something that, we struggle sometimes to actually manage, which is one of those good problems to have type of scenarios. But as Dan said too, you have to sort of weed through some of these. It's a bit manual in that way, but we love it. It's going very, very well. So,
brilliant. Thanks for that. And any tips or advice for Alibaba's newest merchant?
Yeah, I mean, do it ASAP if you can. As Dan has mentioned here, this is a really wonderful opportunity to make connections on a global scale for your products, for your capabilities, to really be able to have a nice presentation to the space. It's a great R&D tool really as well, where you can put up particular products and see levels of interest from the market, and then segment that level of interest geographically or otherwise. So I think that for any new group that's looking to come onto the Alibaba platform, you will find a very good and significant reason for using the platform, and that may be different from one to the other. For one, it may be sales. For others, maybe R&D. For others, it may be some levels of market research. And you do have to keep up with it, as you said before, making sure that you've got attractive photos and really good information and videos. These are things where many groups will fall off. And that's a place where you really should just go into it knowing that it's something that's going to have to be nurtured. So that would be my thoughts and advice on that.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Kareem. And should you want to find Kareem, leaving his links here as well. Great. So before we jump into the open Q&A, and I'll be very quick, I just want to share a couple of other tips. So the first one here: sell on multiple platforms. Why? Because omni-channel is really the way to go these days, right? Different platforms have their own ecosystem buyers, have their own advantages and disadvantages, and frankly, I think that there's some value in just about every platform out there. And that would also double for e-commerce digital versus offline. Here you guys are at an offline event, and there's no real replacement for that. It's lovely to meet you all here. And well, there's a limited number of them, so you should be playing in multiple. Now, let's say that you're making a good margin in B2B and you're in a consumer space. Well, you could certainly dabble in D2C, provided you have at least the basic capabilities. Now, inversely, should you be making good margins in D2C, you might consider dabbling in B2B. And there's not a lot of platforms that will offer solutions for both. Alibaba.com is catered specifically towards business buyers, but like I mentioned before, we don't get involved if you want to set your MOQ at 1. And finally, you need to know the ins and outs of the marketplace honestly prior to joining. So ask all the hard questions with the service team before signing up. You need to really know what guardrails are in place that are actually not just going to benefit you, but might actually be a challenge, right? And you need to examine the entire loadout or mix of those tools to find the right match for you today. Finally, so how to get started on Alibaba.com. It's actually fairly simple if you drill it down into 3 steps. So first you need to make a very informed decision for your business, right? Now, if you're talking to me or any of the U.S. staff, you will find that they're very consultative, right? Meaning that we might tell you, hey, why don't we circle back in 6 months once you have your trucking solution in place, or once you have your certifications for food export, and so on. Once you've hit that stage where you're ready to go and you've selected your package and you've made sure you've secured all of the support and tools that you need, well, then it's just to start your onboarding. Now, onboarding here we say is about a 90-day process, but that's just your initial onboarding. It actually never ends. Dan can certainly attest to that, being now in his 11th year on the platform. I'm sure he's still got his team going through his keywords, finding new trends, showcasing different products, mixing up which ones they operate more, and so on. Simply because trends change, buyer bases change, and if you're trying to get in touch with incremental buyers, you might need to change how you're marketing. Finally, just be consistent, really. On Alibaba, you will find that the more active you are, the more engagement your products get. And should you want to begin your journey today, you simply need to scan this code and you will book a time on my calendar. All right, so it's time. We've got 7 minutes for my favorite bit, so that's pretty good. So, does anybody have questions for Kareem, Dan, or myself?
A very simple question. Kareem just mentioned Alibaba started to build the US networks. Maybe this question is more for Eric. So when did that happen?
Oh, very good question. We soft launched globally about 15 years ago with our TrustPass program, and that is what Dan originally joined on. About 8 years ago, we launched Global Gold Supplier, which is the global access for businesses outside of mainland China. And since then, we've ramped up operations in Europe, United States, Mexico, Southeast Asia, and Turkey. So U.S. suppliers have been welcome on the platform for over a decade, but we have created special packages for them in the past 7-8 years. And thanks again for your question. All right. Any other questions for the floor? Sure.
You started some of the separation. Alibaba is Chinese and worldwide website to the United States. Globally, the supply chain or just the regional is town. Do you understand me?
So it's a very common misconception that joining as a U.S. supplier means you're serving the U.S. buyer base. Actually, regardless of which type of membership you join on, you have access to the global buyer base. We only operate one global marketplace. Thank you. in the back. Right, very good question. So whenever you're transmitting data, especially outside of the United States, you want to be mindful about what that data is. If it's here within the United States, you're protected by the same, right? You file a police report if somebody's violating your IP. We have IP protections. In fact, should you have a brand, even if it's not top 1,000 global brand, you can go to our IP registration place and protect your brand from any potential bad actors. Brilliant. So last chance to ask another question. Otherwise, thank you all for joining today, and well, I hope you're in touch. And thanks again, Dan.